Welcome to the Supplier Diversity podcast series, hosted with Sip and Paul Harvey, who's Head of Global Procurement Operations and Infrastructure at Marsh and McLennan Companies. Paul's an experienced senior procurement executive who's had a varied career across manufacturing, financial services and consulting roles over 30 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Paul at a recent SIPS and MSD UK launch event for the joint paper that you can see on screen. On the day, Paul sat on a panel at the event and he discussed how he promotes and embeds supplier diversity at Marsh and McLennan Companies. He also shared some of the opportunities and benefits that this has created, such as unlocking innovative solutions in the supply base and getting ahead of the competition through speed to market through some of these smaller, more agile suppliers. And this really resonated with me, as by looking at supplier diversity a bit more strategically and creating opportunities for a more diverse and inclusive supply base, you can access these ideas outside of the normal pool of suppliers. And there's some huge benefits that you can tap into there. So we thought by doing this podcast today, we can bring some of this to life for you. So thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time to join us today. We do have some questions for you, because we're really keen to understand what supplier diversity really means to you.
Thanks, Danielle. So, I think supplier diversity is a number of different things, but for me, it's about not just representing the communities that we serve as clients within our respective businesses, but from a sourcing and procurement perspective, having access to innovation, to new ideas, to new approaches that we can use to either enhance or, in certain circumstances, replace our existing supply chain. So it's about, you mentioned speed to market and agility, but it's for me, it's about access to new and creative ideas within a supply base that perhaps typically a sourcing and procurement function would not have direct access to.
Some good points there, definitely. And I think it's those ideas that kind of generate the future of the organisation and where it's going. So innovation's really kind of a big driver for procurement. And we talk about value a lot as well. So what value has supplier diversity delivered to your organisation, kind of outside of the normal commercial benefits?
So I think one of the common traps, if that's the correct word, but one of the common failings of supplier diversity programs that I've seen or been involved in is that they tend to have a singular metric for success, which is dollar value, because in sourcing and procurement, we are typically focused on financial value to the organization, and of course that's one of our core deliverables to any business. But I think having a robust supply diversity program in your organization has a bunch of other benefits for not just the business that you serve, but also your own sourcing and procurement team. We in MMC have taken a very long-term view on the evolution of supplier diversity in our business. I would still say that as much as we do a number of different tranches in our program, we're relatively embryonic in the things that we're doing. But for the team, you can be really quite creative in terms of developing skill sets within sourcing and procurement that perhaps typically people haven't had the ability or the access to. So we have had mentoring programs where sourcing and procurement professionals within the team have worked with diverse vendors, entrepreneurs, and given them advice on how to deal with blue chips, how the sourcing and procurement process works. It becomes quite a two-way learning initiative. So it's about having access to the vendor base, as we talked about. It's about building robust, innovative supply-based solutions, both for now and the future. But it's also about having access for your teams to develop their broader business skills, their broader leadership skills in working and aiding vendors who perhaps are very new to market, may have some phenomenally great ideas and products and solutions that will be of value to us, but also aiding them along their journey in terms of development and success.
Great, thank you, Paul. I think that two-way part's really interesting in terms of learning from each other, because often it is quite different dealing with some of these blue chip companies from a smaller supplier sense. And then similarly from the procurement teams who are used to their current talent pool, having that platform to engage with the smaller suppliers. So yeah, I can see how that does potentially take a bit of time. And you've had quite a lot of experience in this area in terms of setting that up and getting buy-in strategically in the business. So what would be your top tips then for embedding a supplier diversity program for some of our members in their organisations?
So certainly taking a long-term view, having a strategy and an approach that works for your business. My kind of core pillars, if you like, would be to focus on building the infrastructure of your program. So think about your processes, where you see opportunities for new and agile solutions within your existing supply chain, how that works within your existing category strategies, and try and focus on areas that would be easy to enable and have access for these vendors. I think it's about embedding targets that work to drive the program. So as I mentioned before, that's not necessarily putting a dollar or a pound or a euro sign against the amount of money that you necessarily want to be spending on your supply or with your diverse vendors. It's often it's about the approach. So we've played around with different targets as we've developed our own approach. And some of the things that we've put into play are perhaps targets of numbers of RFPs per year per category where diverse vendors are included. Maybe ensuring that for every significant RFP within a certain category, we have at least one diverse vendor in that program. But then think beyond tier one. Think about tier two. Think about your own preferred master service providers, single source providers, and look at how you can influence through the agreements that you have with those companies their own supply diverse supply chain. And look at the memberships that you can and the knowledge that you can gain through the memberships with some of the bodies out there, MSD UK. I would certainly recommend conversing with if you're not already. But access to their established vendor base and then understanding how those vendors can fit into your supply chain, as I say, either tier one or tier two. And then in terms of driving success for you and that program of supply diversity, most businesses today have got established diversity and inclusion activities in various parts of their business. And I would encourage you to have conversations with those bodies, with those groups and communities, and look at how you can leverage the work that they're already doing within the business to add to the narrative of supply diversity and ideally link the two. Because supply diversity and inclusion, are one and the same, and they should all be part of the same approach and program. So leverage that. And then finally, I think most businesses are looking for agile, innovative solutions that get products, services, solutions to market in a quicker and more effective timeline. So again, leveraging the innovation narrative within your business and looking at how you can link your supply diversity program into established innovation forums or workshops is certainly a key enabler to success, or that's what I found in my time in developing these programs.
Thank you, Paul. You've clearly had quite a lot of experience over the last 8 to 9 years, you said, at MMC. So we've got a lot to gain from your insights today, and some useful advice for our members in terms of starting on their supply diversity programs and finding the right approach for them. I think that part was key from what you've just said there in terms of what works for them and where it could fit in their organisation. And it is part and parcel of the big D&I agenda, and procurement have the most influence on the supply chain. So it's a really great initiative to be involved in and engage in the right people. So we'd really encourage you to download the report that we did with MSC UK earlier this year, which is on screen, on supplier diversity. In there, we've got further insights, tips, case studies. I think, Paul, you contributed to that as well. So that's available on the SIPS website. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today, Paul. Your passion for this and drive and what you've achieved so far is really very inspiring. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you for everyone for listening. You can download the report on the SIPS website, and that is at sips.org/supplier diversity.